Get the cheese to Sickbay. The doctor should look at it as soon as possible.
Welcome back to the shipyard, and get the cheese to Sickbay. For loyal listeners, this is a completely different take on Get the Cheese to Sickbay. For new listeners, well, this might be how things look going forward. So, this is a segment where I attempt to repair things, where I do my best to say, this doesn't work. Why doesn't it work, and how do I do it better? Photon torpedoes. Really, almost all secondary weapons. There's problems. So what do I mean by that? Because some people, new players especially, kind of look at them and they go, oh yeah, that's nice. I watch the show and photon torpedoes. Yeah, I hear that all the time. Yeah, photon torpedoes. That's how you finish ships off, right? Right? Yeah, no, not an attack wing. So the problem with photon torpedoes is that they require you to have a target lock, and then you spend said target lock, so you can't use it for rerolls. And most photon torpedoes do not have quality. And if they do have quality, it's one conversion of a battle station into a critical hit. So that conversion is nice, but it's not nearly enough. If photon torpedoes gave you significantly more dice than your ship was naturally rolling, then you'd actually have something to consider. But when most photon torpedoes are rolling either equal dice or one more die than your ship's natural attack, you are essentially spending an action to get +1 attack die. And when your dice roll 50% hits and crits, it isn't worthwhile to just roll one more that has a 50% hit result when you could save a target lock to re-roll any dice that don't come up as a hit, because then every die has a 75% chance to become a hit, because the odds of missing twice are 50% times 50%, which is only 25%. I know that's a little bit of math, that's a little bit of probability nerding out, but it's still 75%. If you have a battle station on top of that, your odds are even better, and I don't want to go into all of those specific numbers. One, because I don't have them handy, but two, I also don't want to drag out this episode and bog it down with numbers. I'm stating all of this to say that torpedoes have that problem. So you could get away with it if torpedoes let you roll a bunch more attack dice. I'm talking the 8, 10, 12 attack dice. And you go, okay, well, we've got transphasic torpedoes. Those roll 10 attack dice. Sure, but they go on one ship. USS Voyager, not even the generic Intrepid class, but it's got to be on Voyager. And that's okay, right? Transphasics are viable, but they're also super expensive. They're 10 points. I'm talking about your standard photon torpedo that's 4 or 5 points, letting you roll 10 attack dice. So basically, I'm proposing, like, you get dice equal to double the points that you're paying for them. In exchange, you do have to have a target lock, you do have to spend your target lock, and they could even say the dice you roll cannot be modified outside of the modifiers that exist on the torpedo card. So you cannot use like Core's reroll, Picard 8's set crit. You couldn't use a battle station token. You're just stuck with a dice result. Maybe that's not fantastic. But law of averages would say that it would work out, especially if every torpedo had a built-in either battle station to crit or a re-roll all your blanks. Bring variety of those. I know plasma torpedoes from Romulans have the re-roll all of your blanks, but that's not enough given the low dice quantity. Bunch of dice, yeah, sure. That would be something. So that's one option. Another option is something that we've seen in practice with the Wandering Inn. And I know I was not the first person to suggest it to them, but I did help them kind of refine the system a little bit. And that is exploding crits, meaning every crit that you either set or naturally roll, nothing that you convert, you get to roll another die. And if it's a hit or crit, you add that damage to your damage pool. And if you roll crits, you get to keep doing that. So to me, that is reminiscent of the utter destructive force that torpedoes can unleash on a ship. That is a good option. A third option is to allow torpedoes that hit your shields with a critical to do normal damage to a ship's hull, or even critical damage to a ship's hull, because these are torpedoes. They should have a bigger effect than phasers. Fourth option, allow torpedoes to work at range 4. Now, I prefer range 4 as opposed to having torpedoes work at, say, range 2 to 3, and then have primary weapons only work at range 1 to 2 with Borg, all 360 stuff, but Borg and fighters then being limited to range 1. I think that's a drastic step that I don't want to touch. I mean, that's a complete rework of the fundamental design of the game, and more so, it slows everything down. And really, that's not what makes Attack Wing fun. What makes Attack Wing fun is getting in there, hurting people, not people, but ships, and rolling a bunch of dice. That's an awesome part of the game. You want things to shoot at range 3, and if torpedoes let you shoot at range 4, that opens up a ton more options, and I think that you actually have to consider torpedoes, because then you're looking at an effect that does change a fundamental aspect of the game. You see, this is why magnetometric guided charge is a fantastic secondary weapon. It changes a fundamental aspect of the game. It stops the opponent from rolling defense dice. And if you do that, well, you're doing damage, guaranteed. I don't think photon torpedoes should go anywhere near that. I think that's special for mag charges. But it goes to show what is needed for people to bring secondary weapons along. The ones that are actually in lieu of your attack. So I've thrown out a bunch of options. And I'm left kind of on the fence, and I've always said don't land on the fence, it hurts. So I do want to come down on a side of what I think needs to be done with torpedoes for the sake of balance in the game. I don't want to go to exploding crits, as much fun as that is, and I have incorporated that into my own campaign. I do not think it would be healthy for competitive play. So I'm going to set that aside and say, we can come back. I would like to see range 4. I know that means you got to have another range ruler, and that's a little annoying, but WizKids could simply print an extra template range that goes beyond range 3, and you just stick the 2 end to end, and that gets you to range 4. Because you'd only need it for very rare circumstances, and at that point, why not? Then it also serves as range 1. So that has a double good purpose. There's a lot of other effects. I would love to see more dice being added in there for low cost, but dice becomes a very slippery slope. There are, of course, support cards that can be added to the game that would increase the viability of torpedoes. The problem is that the support cards need to be cheap because torpedoes already cost so much. Maybe there needs to be a card like Sakona that only works for photon torpedoes, or not weapons, but weapons with a printed attack value on them. Hopefully that makes sense. And then they can discount a bunch, and you put a caveat that that card cannot be run with Sakona. Something like that. If that's the case, that's how you lower the cost of torpedoes and make everything a little more playable. The resource of high yield photon torpedoes didn't go far enough. It was nice, but it just wasn't quite enough. Okay, so I've kind of learned when to stop. Maybe you guys disagree and I go too far and ramble, but I'm going to call it here. Hopefully this serves as a bit of a primer to get the discussion rolling. That's what I like doing. By all means, comment. Tell me what you think of the ideas. Tell me what you do to change secondary weapons in general. There's a lot of great ideas out there, and I'd love to hear more, and if necessary, I'll do more follow-up. I think next week I will touch on fighters, specifically Romulan fighters, but I will touch on fighters, and we'll go from there. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, we'll see you around the shipyard. Take care.